Okay, this is my dad, Bill Shuitt, and I'm interviewing him about the Cold War.
Hi, Will. Glad to answer your questions for you.
Okay. How old were you during the Cold War?
Well, as everyone knows, the Cold War started right after World War II, and I wasn't born until 1958, so I missed the whole front end of the Cold War, but I have some pretty good recollections of things that happened as I got a little older and got a little bit more aware of things into the 1960s, perhaps.
Okay, what were you doing at this time during your life?
Well, as I said, I was born in '58, so I think maybe some of my earliest recollections of historical things go back to about when I was 10 years old, or about 1968, somewhere around there.
Okay. Do you recall any drills, precautions, or different exercises that you were taught to prepare for an attack?
Well, everyone my age likes to remember the civil defense drills that we had at school, and it's true that they made us hide under our desks and did a move called duck and cover, where we would go under our desks in case there might be some sort of a nuclear attack. It seems silly now that you would defend against thermonuclear war by holding your hands over your head, but that's what we did, and there was a lot of other things going on, public notices, television, radio, about civil defense measures of evacuation routes, buildings where people could go in case of an attack, and sort of a bomb shelter kind of mentality existed back then, and people paid attention, and I think it probably did more to scare people than it did to actually provide any protection for them, but the government was trying hard to make people understand that this was always a possibility.
Okay. Do you remember any times when people discriminated against Russians?
Not that I can remember. We didn't have any Russians that we knew, or Russians in our neighborhood, but I'm sure it was probably hard for people who had come over here and really weren't part of the Cold War apparatus, but I'm sure they weren't treated very well, but I don't have any personal recollection or anything like that.
Okay. Was the public always aware of what was going on between the United States and the Soviet Union?
Well, I think that obviously the two governments were both involved in large campaigns to inform and maybe some misinformation about what was going on in the Cold War. But in the United States, the media was full of information about various aspects, the space race, the arms race, what was going on in world events, and of course the media was also full of television shows about spies and James Bond and all these other things that also kind of entertained us at the same time.
Okay. Did the Cold War affect your daily life?
Not on a daily basis. I don't think that as school kids, or even when I was, later on in college or early in my career, I don't think that people ran around wondering whether the Russians were coming that day, or if things were going to escalate and go into a full-scale war situation. But it was always maybe in the backs of everyone's minds, and there were plenty of jokes about it, and it was sort of a restless kind of thing. Growing up in Milwaukee, right on the edge of Lake Michigan, being an industrial city, we were all acutely aware that we were prone maybe more to attack than anyone else, and we had that ring of the Nike missile sites that was supposed to protect us. And one of the sort of dark jokes was that the Russians were so inept that if they tried to take out the missile sites, those people like us who didn't live right on the lakeshore, about 2 miles back, would probably take the direct hits. And so that was something that I remember people joking about a lot here in Milwaukee, something probably associated with Friday night fish fries and that sort of thing.
Okay. Do you recall the McCarthyism and the Red Scare?
No. The Red Scare was something that happened in in the 50s, where people were afraid of influential people who might be communists, and that was pretty much all done by the time I was born. However, parts of that continued, and I think that I remember discussions even in my own home. My father was quite conservative, and he was always worried about communists lurking out there in government and industry and things like that, and trying to identify who was redder than who. And those were discussions that everyday people had all the time.
Okay. Were people actually afraid that the Russians were going to attack the United States?
I think that was sort of a roving anxiety, and I think that the Russians trying to build up their power in the world was a reality, and how close they were to actually having a first strike sort of capability, or even wanting to do something like that, was a matter of huge conjecture out there in the world. But I think that was left to government people and professors and things like that, whereas the rank and file regular people had other things to worry about. And I think that the people themselves probably bore the cost of the war, not necessarily in worry, but in just the enormous amount of taxation and other things that were necessary to keep up with the arms and everything that were necessary to hold it back.
Do you have any other memories involving the Cold War?
Well, I guess my most vivid memory is, as I got older, it was at the end of the Cold War, and everyone applauded the end, and it was the vigilant efforts of the government that did it. And it was that famous speech by President Reagan when he told Premier Gorbachev, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. And he was so emphatic about it, and it actually happened. And it was a wonderful thing to see those forces brought to bear and have peace in the Cold War finally happen.
Okay, thank you for letting me interview you and for all your assistance.
Well, you're welcome. I enjoyed doing it.
Okay.